Welcome, let's talk about serial killers. My name is Sheesh Merriweather and I'm the founder of Crime Viral Online. Today I'll be doing what I do best, which is talking about serial killers. The mention of the word serial killers will conjure up images of Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, Richard Ramirez, but today on this channel we want to hand it over to the women as we look at murder for money, the motivations of female serial killers. In these following cases, the female of the species is just as deadly as the male. And like their cold-blooded male counterparts, they showed little or no remorse for their crimes. But before we really get into it, we have a treat for all you true crime fans. Magellan TV is a new type of documentary streaming membership founded by filmmakers. Their team of producers and curators brings together premium content that dives deep into important documentary subjects. Magellan TV has the richest and most varied true crime content available anywhere. What makes this collection so unique is that it takes you into such fascinating areas as the link between crime and the paranormal, and deep dives into the great villains and criminals of history. Magellan TV also has some of the best collections available in history, science, nature, and space. There are so many great choices, it's hard to stop watching once you start. Magellan TV has over 3,000 documentaries to choose from. New programs are added on a weekly basis. Even better, there's a growing selection of shows available in 4K without additional cost. Best of all, no ads, no commercial interruptions. I was watching the documentary A Shallow Grave that explores a mystery of what happened to businessman Alex Steenkamp, who was buried for 8 years in the backyard of a house in Brixton, Johannesburg. The private investigator gave some crazy statistics about the murder count in South Africa. Annually, there are around 20,000 murders in the country each year, and that figure just blew my mind. He was a very busy private investigator and one of the best there is. You can watch Magellan TV on any device or connected TV. You can even cast from your phone to your TV. It's super easy to use. So check it out now. Click the link below to get a full month free. Let's get you back to those deadly ladies. According to the serial killer database, female serial killers are responsible for less than 12% of serial murders. Most notorious female serial killers are often involved in a partnership with a boyfriend or husband. Take Fred and Rose West, Myra Hindley and Ian Brady, or Carla Homogler and Paul Bernardo, for example. Now, two psychopathic serial killers in a relationship together will not last long. Each has to outdo each other in wrongdoings, each wants to be top dog, and each looks out for only number one. Even slightly provoked, they will turn against each other. However, for these lone female serial killers, they are often motivated by financial gain, if not solely motivated by financial gain. They love collecting life insurance, inheriting property in their name, and cashing in social security checks that do not belong to them. It's all about the money. They also typically target a victim who has no chance of fighting back, either someone they know who's elderly, infirm, or even children. Professor of psychology Marissa Harrison found that 65% of male serial killers stalk their victims compared to only 3.6% of female serial killers. If you think of this divide as male serial killers hunt for their victims, whereas female serial killers gather their victims. Female serial killers will often already know the victim personally, and the most common method of killing is poisoning. There is a great paper in the Journal of Forensic Psychiatry and Psychology titled Female Serial Killers: Means, Motives and Makings. These key differences are put together in this chart that you can see now. So as I mentioned, it's very rare a female serial killer will target a complete stranger. 58.2% of female serial killers were actually related to the victim. Only 3.6% of female serial killers stalk their victims beforehand, compared to a staggering 65.4% of male serial killers who stalk their victims pre-murder. It is also very rare for the motive of a female serial killer to be sexual, and they tend to kill from the comfort of their own home. They also compared serial killer nicknames between the two, which is fair enough, as Nanny Doss, who murdered 11 victims in cold blood, she is known as the Giggling Granny. So female serial killers have money on their minds and they will stop at nothing to get it. Let's go back in history to Victorian times, where we will find female serial killer Emilia Dyer. She had a career as a baby farmer, a common enough profession in Victorian England. Emilia trained as a nurse, where she learned from another midwife of the existence of baby farmers, people who opened their homes to young women who got pregnant out of wedlock. Baby farmers would then promise to find adoptive homes for the babies. So she opened her own home to desperate young mothers, and she charged a fee to find the newborns homes, but instead they would be starved to death or smothered. Emilia was then caught when in 1896 the body of a baby was discovered wrapped in parcel paper that still had her home address. When police raided her house, they discovered the overwhelming stench of rotting flesh. The Thames River was drained, and this resulted in the discovery of more than 50 infant bodies, each with tape wrapped around their necks. Emilia later, she was quoted as saying about the tape, "That was how you could tell it was one of mine." Following an investigation, her real victim count is believed to be between 200 to 400 innocent lives. She is now known as one of the most prolific female serial killers in history, if not one of the most prolific serial killers of all time. Also in this study, they found, like Emilia, female serial killers typically tend to be in a caregiving role as either a mother, a nurse, or a carer for the elderly or infirm. Healthcare professionals from all walks of life do wonderful things every day. However, for these female psychopaths, they saw those who needed their help as potential victims. They trade off time and caring for financial security. And once you are in the trappings of a female serial killer, they will very soon know more about your personal finances than you do yourself. Here is the seemingly sweet little old lady, Dorothea Puente. She became known as the boarding house killer, as she killed her elderly tenants, many who were mentally ill or disabled, and she cashed in their social security checks. She buried the bodies of her 13 victims in the yard at her home in Sacramento, California. Her evil crimes netted her around $13,000 a month. In 1998, police inquired at the boarding house following the disappearance of one of her tenants. Arriving at the property, they discovered the first body, and after some further digging, they found several more. The death penalty was expected for Dorothea, but her defense team pleaded with the jury that executing Dorothea would be executing your or mine grandma. She was sentenced to life in prison instead. So that was the typical profile of the female serial killer. Seemingly kind, caring ladies who killed those closest to them so they could take over the finances. Then in the late 1980s, one female serial killer came along who changed everything. Eileen Wuornos was responsible for the murders of 7 men in Florida. She was a criminal with a hot temper who prostituted herself along the highways, including the busy tourist route of the I-75. Standing 5'4" tall and weighing just 130 pounds, the tiny Eileen often carried a pistol in her purse in case she felt threatened or got into trouble. Many of her victims were shot several times and also robbed of their possessions, which would later be pawned for cash. The bodies were then dumped, and on more than one occasion, she stole their vehicles. Police were not quick to catch Eileen and bring her to justice because at first they didn't know they were looking for a female serial killer because, well, female serial killers of this kind were unheard of. And they did not have this profile for a female serial killer. This was a new kind of predator. She fit the profile of a male serial killer. She didn't kill in the comfort of her own home, and she used a gun instead of poison. and she killed strangers instead of family friends. And she also killed for vengeance. Eileen insisted that the murders were in self-defense. She said, on a killing day, those guys always wanted to go to the back of the woods, and now I know why they did it. They wanted to hurt me. I figured if these guys lived and I got fried for attempted murder, I might as well get fried for murder instead. At the time of the murders, she had an impaired mental capacity and mental disturbance, linked to a history of sexual abuse throughout her childhood and teenage years. They argue that alcoholism and genetic deficits, she also had an IQ of 81, also played a huge role in her actions. Despite all of these factors, it did not save her from death row. On October 9, 2002, after refusing any further appeals, 46-year-old Eileen Wuornos was strapped to a gurney on Florida's death row and electrocuted to death. She is one of the few serial killers that I have personally found people have the most empathy for. So, gentlemen, hold on to your wallets and think twice before signing that life insurance policy, as it is very unlikely you will meet your end at the hands of a female serial killer, but it's not impossible. Thank you for watching this video. We will be back next week with even more. Feel free to comment below with future suggestions for videos, and don't forget to like and subscribe.